So I see one question. When would I use the BR1 Mini versus a Balance 20X or a Balance 2030? It really comes down to what features you care about for that user. So the Balance 20X has a lot better wired throughput. It has a lot better Wi-Fi connectivity on it. So if you're trying to provide kind of an all-in-one solution, that Balance 20X is probably a better fit. It's got more Ethernet ports for phones and things like that. If you've got just more devices out there that as a part of your work from home solution, maybe that's a better fit. If you're just trying to deploy a single device that can protect, maybe just, again, like my scenario here, I've got a laptop and a phone, cool, the BR1 Mini is a great fit. The BR1 Mini doesn't have quite as much speed, but it can still do 100 megs, right? I can do everything that I need to do to host a webinar, have calls, do my work all day long. That's plenty of speed. And again, it's really not about the speed, it's about that consistency and quality. So the BR1 Mini is able to provide all that protection and great user experience still, even though it's not maybe quite as fast as that Balance 20X. So there's just a cost and feature trade-off there between those. So it's really just a matter of lining up whatever your priorities are. You see a question about the region blocking for websites hosted in different cloud platforms. We're using GeoIP to do that. So if the websites are hosted in a local region that you've selected, great, it's going to work well. If it's a geodiverse site that's maybe spread out across lots of countries, I think it's very, very likely that you're still going to hit the local one in country, but maybe there's something to sort out there. But nonetheless, we're using GeoIP to drive what countries are allowable and what aren't. So it really comes down to where those applications are being hosted. But again, those are more site-specific things that you can kind of sort through, but I don't expect you to have a lot of problems on that. The countries should map out pretty accurately without any real work required. Another question on the Max Transit Duo, can you set priorities to different cellular SIMs? Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I should have touched on that actually. So yeah, if you've got a dual cellular device, maybe you've got two different LTE providers and one of them is a lot more expensive than the other. Maybe you just want to make sure that you're using your cheapest data first instead of using it all at the same time. So you can definitely set different priorities in those failover schemes. So you could fail over from your wired to provider A, and then if provider A on the LTE side is still having problems, then you can fail over to provider B. So you've got more flexibility in how you use those connections when you've got multiple radios. So yes, that's definitely possible. Another question I think that's really good here is, will WAN smoothing always use the secondary LTE? So I may incur higher LTE usage costs. So it just depends on which applications you choose to protect. By default, when you've got two connections in there, you're not going to use that LTE connection until you start steering traffic over to that, or you put it in the same priority. So you've got control over that. And then you can use both those simple tools in the SpeedFusion Cloud menu that I showed you to carve out those applications you do want to protect. And then you can get more granular if you're trying to get more specific using our outbound policy manager. So I didn't show you that today, but anybody who's deployed Peplink over any amount of time has seen that outbound policy manager. So it's really nice because you can say, like, again, your default rule might not include that cellular connection. So that would mean any traffic that you don't specifically tell to use that LTE won't. It can't. So that's how you protect your Apple TV or your Google Home and those kinds of things from chewing up cellular bandwidth. Again, you just create some simple policies that prevent that from ever happening, and then you do protect the applications that you care about. Another question here is about the air monitor function that I showed you. So that's monitoring the Wi-Fi spectrum as a remote troubleshooting tool. That will interrupt the user's Wi-Fi connection temporarily. So it just depends on how prevalent that issue is for that user. But again, it's a great tool that you can turn on remotely without sending anybody out there to get a quick sample, and then you can shut it off, get their Wi-Fi service back up and running. Oftentimes they might just have a non-Wi-Fi device that's kind of interfering with their spectrum, or they're in a really busy neighborhood. in any case, you can use that to quickly diagnose it and then get their Wi-Fi service back up and running. Another question, does the SpeedFusion preset for Office 365 cover Teams? Yes, I did that this morning. It absolutely does cover Teams. And then you can get more granular actually within that. So you can carve out Office 365, which would include all those different applications. And then we've got on our outbound policy manager, you could differentiate between like OneDrive and Teams calls or something like that. So you've got another layer of application identification that you can actually implement to get really granular on which services within that larger product suite are important to you. So again, you could maybe do hot failover on your OneDrive stuff, but do WAN smoothing for your Teams call. Okay, folks, I think we're about wrapped up here. I'll give you the last 6 minutes back to you. Thanks so much for joining. Take care, folks.